This is the October 16th Financial Committee meeting of the Concord School Board. On the committee is Mr. Cotton, Ms. Meeker, myself. Absent is Jess Campbell, but we do have Pam Walsh, School Board member Pam Walsh, here as well. So we will proceed, and if Ms. Campbell comes in, she'll join us. With that, Mr. Dunn, are you setting us up?
I'm going to pause for station identification.
All right. So as soon as we get set up for visual, so that everybody else can see the handouts that we have.
I was gonna say, do we have an agenda with like
I
topics?
do not have an agenda, but, oh, I don't have the agenda with me, so I have an
Maybe the
agenda.
chairman ought to have the.
All right, so I'm going to, with regards to this evening, the agenda is to discuss student service, to then take a look at the unaudited fiscal year 24 budget, the fiscal year 25 budget, and to start looking ahead, believe it or not, to the fiscal year 26 budget. We will also discuss electric buses and the option of van transportation. So we have a pretty busy agenda this evening. Starting out with student services. So as soon as Mr. Fabrizio is set up, we will kick off with that. So, Jack, let us know when you're ready.
It's the Lenovo, it works.
I'll let him, I will let John go first. He is the first agenda item.
Okay.
It says student services, so he'll give you the data background, and then I'll plug in and take over.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just kind of give you one of the things that came up. I talked about, at our last board meeting, I talked about some heavy amount of move-ins that we've had to the district, and not as many move-outs. And typically over years, that balances, well, we're unbalanced. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about what our overall, based on some of the information I took in, from a lot of feedback from the board, I put together a slide to address the data. We'll talk about kind of, in Jack's part, when he talks finance, about what this all means for money, but I'm gonna talk about the background with the data for now. So, as you see, it starts off 5-year trends. This is traditionally, I've put this forward when I've done my budget presentation to look at trends over the years in where we are. And you will see we're trending, you know, we are definitely trending in a direction that, you know, is upward in doing this. And I'm going to apologize for 1 second. I need to get out of this and show the right slide because I just noticed something. I apologize. Give me 1 second. I'm in error on my slide right there.
No, we're good.
I'll make sure I give you the right information. And then I'll jump back to this. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
When I looked at it, when I got up there, I said, that's not the right slide.
Gives me time to read everything.
All right. Let's project again. Okay. All right. So, and I'll update those slides and give them to Jack so he can upload them. But if you look, these are this is kind of our projections over the last 5 years. And I don't know why it will not enlarge, because it just doesn't want to right now.
I can see. Can everybody see?
I can read it. It's
Okay,
fine.
good.
You can see that.
Thank you. Sorry, it's having technical issues. So as you'll see, we're trending up when it comes down to, you're looking at percentages at the elementary school. We are pumping up to over 20% in some areas, 24% at certain schools. It is getting up there and up there. And there's a lot of causal factors to why this is happening that I'll talk about in the preceding slides. But even Even at Runlet, Runlet's staying pretty steady. We're at about 18, we've been to 17 to 18%. That's stayed pretty steady. So what that's saying to me is, although our number at the elementaries are really going to increase, it's what we've talked about. It's our preschool, it's things I've talked to the trend over the last 3 years. You can see that trend in the elementary school really rising. That eventually will get to our middle and high, and that's concerning when we're looking at trends. So that's why it's important over 5 years we look at this to say, here's a trend of what we're looking at. Yes?
Is this just students with IEPs or students with IEPs and 504?
Just IEPs.
Just
We didn't go
IEPs.
into 504s in this presentation.
Thank
It's
you.
just IEPs.
So John, is this more a situation, I mean, I've been listening to NPR and other places where it seems that, for example, autism has been increasingly being diagnosed, even in adults when it was never diagnosed before. Is this a situation where issues are being diagnosed more closely than they used to be?
Yes, that's one of the factors that diagnosed more closely at a very, very earlier age. They're being diagnosed too, is what we're having. So we wouldn't see students with some of the medical needs we saw until later on. They would be, they'd come to school, they would have issues, they'd be referred. Often the school is the first one to reach out to the family and say, you know, we think you should consult your medical professional. We're seeing some things around vision or hearing or you know, way of being in general, overall health. Now that's happening a lot earlier. Kids are coming to us with already medical plans and things like that that are already in place. Autism, they're saying right now that the data is 1 in 8 that has some form, which is huge if you think about that and what that is for our numbers. It's being diagnosed right after birth now, you know, and we're seeing a lot more of that coming in, early identification. We're finding out at 2 years old about students, and we have pretty much that year to understand and start the programming for them. So at 3, when they turn 3, we start the IEP and we start services for them. So I shared this at the last board meeting. This is something that you want to control things, and we're all in a position of watching numbers and controlling. This creeped in, and I think over the last, since a year ago, July, we're looking at numbers of pretty significant amount of students with disabilities who've moved into the district. I mean, we had over 94 students move in last year into the school district that were identified previously. What that means is they come in with an IEP with services in place that another team has determined are appropriate for the public school. We have no options at that point. We have to take them in, and it's called the 30-day review. They come in, and for the first 30 days, you enact what the IEP says, and you monitor in data. Then the team meets, and you decide, is it appropriate for the current, is the current services appropriate? Then is the current setting appropriate that they're in right now? And that happens with all of these children. That's the way the law allows us to do it, so we have to do it. So if they come in with nursing support, one-on-one support, all those things in, we need to take them in and we need to provide it. And that's very hard from a budgeting point of view because I didn't know they were moving in when I sat in front of you last year, you know, at this time. Yes.
Is there any perception or belief that people are specifically moving into Concord because other school districts are not as supportive as Concord is?
I wouldn't say it's not there as supportive. What I would say is that the services are here in this area. A lot of companies that do have behavior interventionists and occupational therapists and things like that on the private sector side have established in the Concord area. So students can receive services both in school and out of school in a pretty local area. When you get more rural, you get out there, they don't exist. These companies allow insurance payment, so they're able to do so many hours per week in the home, outside in the community, things like that. So it's the kind of what it's become for all the surrounding areas is Concord's really become a hub for a lot of services, both medically and for students with needs. And I think you're seeing that evolving, and the school also does an amazing job. They do a really, really good job. Concord's well supported, and we take in everyone, and that's part of who Concord is. And I think that we have supported the student well, and I think that word's out there in the community. I know I work a lot with the Parent Information Center, and they would tell you that Concord is a place that is growing when it comes to our needs of students.
Can I ask a quick,
Sure.
slightly sensitive question, which is that when children come into the district with their own IEP and you have that 30 days of assessment, is it common to have to adjust their IEP after that 30 days? Or is it-
Sometimes. Sometimes, I mean, our team starts working with them, our speech pathologists, our occupational therapists, school psychologists, all of our, Concord's unique in the fact that all of those are our employees, I just mentioned. And we have pretty tight teams that have worked together for a long time together. In many other districts, you'll have a lot of contracted services that come in for those up mentioned I did. So your team's probably not has the experience of working together as much. Our teams are, so they're pretty quick at noticing trends and areas of concern for students and adjusting as needed. Or sometimes in the setting they may have been in, it was a much more smaller school setting. They may not need as many services because of the fact that they may have less numbers, smaller rural schools up north, smaller class sizes. They may not have needed it. When they're in a larger place like this, they may need more support.
Gotcha, thank you.
Based on that. That happens.
So, John, you're saying, and let me just be clear, is that, we do a good job at providing for student needs. We are legally obligated to provide for those needs,
Yeah.
as is every other school districts.
Correct.
However, we're seeing that because we have a concentration of services, medical, speech, all the other ones, located in Concord, it becomes easier or more attractive for families to be in this area.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's correct, yes. So question was asked, Bob, you asked a question around disability, and we'll look at. So I kind of did some data digging on this just to find out, all right, who are these kids and what are some of that I can project some of the services that they're going to need. And often on some of these, I know our programs, I know what the needs are, and based on what the identified disability, I can kind of forecast a little more. So I broke it down this way. Every kid's individual, every IEP is different, but when we look at a child that has, maybe identified in speech and language, well, I know they're going to need a speech and language pathologist. It's pretty simple to figure that one out. So I had to break this down by numbers to understand what that was. And then I wanted to look at how many actually have support, educational assistance support in their IEPs that have moved in. And you'll see this is kind of something that we had a number of employees that we planned on, and then as the year progresses, you have this many move-ins, that stretches people pretty thin, and you want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all these IEPs. So I kind of had to look at that and balance that out a little bit. So it's one of the things that I did.
Mr. Richards?
Yes, go ahead.
Is that 53 new EAs or individual, or they may be shared among?
There's some shared, there's some one-on-ones, there's a combination, there's some 3 hours, there's some 2 hours, there's 1 hour. It varies in that. I just did for the purpose of noticing that, yes, there is support, and then I can dig deeper on that. But some of that I don't want to get too much into.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to understand.
Yeah.
And to go on Mr. Richards' point, it is our legal responsibility. I also think it's our moral responsibility, and I think this board has been very supportive.
Very much so.
And I do think that especially the early interventions make a lot of sense as a financial investment, as hard as they can be when we see these numbers growing. And I would love to see us tracking, how students who go through our preschool performance program versus others, what kind of supports do they need fewer as they go through the school?
So we're going to come to instructional committee. It's on this year with, it's on there for Sue Kerrigan and her preschool team to come forward and talk about our they call it our POMS. It's our program measurement each year that we have to do. It's part of one of our indicators by the state. So we're going to come forward and talk about that and how our kids do and the data that we've collected on our kids. So we're going to talk about
But
that.
is that just through preschool, or are we
That's
following through high school?
Well, all kids are tracked yearly
Yep.
through their data because every IEPs are annual. So every year you have to do a performance measurement to understand to write the new IEP. So it's all the way through.
Okay.
Ms. Meeker?
I just had a quick question about the numbers. So 138 and 38 are the total number of students. So none of these categories are overlapping?
No.
Okay, thank you.
And then, certainly I agree with Ms. Walsh in the fact that it's the right thing to do as well as the legal thing to do. Since this is the Finance Committee, I'm going to ask the question as to, we're legally responsible, as I said. What support do we get from the state for this? What percentage of our costs associated with individuals does the state provide, and what must our local community provide?
So 66% was provided for this year for our aid that we got for that. 66% of that aid was provided. Jack can talk about the numbers when he comes back in, and he's going to get into that in the next slide and talk about that.
Okay, I didn't mean to jump ahead.
Nope,
Thank you.
that's okay. So this is, I wanted, so again, being concerned about this, I said, okay, let's look at our caseloads. Where are we? Can we manage this from a perspective of, do we have enough special ed teachers that can manage each one of these? Because every one of these students comes with a yearly IEP that has to be written, 3-year annually assessments to be redone on each of these children. So it's important that our services are in place, that we meet the letter of the law on this, and we need people to do that. So we're pretty good everywhere except for, you'll see Krista McAuliffe has an 18 there. I would say that's pushing towards 19, knowing some new things that are in the chute. That number concerns me, and I'll talk about that at budget time probably to address that. We're okay for now, but I'm worried about it if these increase at all. I'm worried about that one. That's my one area where I say I may be asking for a teacher in that area right there. But there's a lot of factors I have to still figure out. Who's coming in, who's going out. It's like who's coming into kindergarten, who's going out in 5th grade. Sometimes you get lucky in a balance. You have a big 5th grade class, they move on, the numbers drop again. So this is like a yearly thing that I have to really do a lot of forecasting on,
Right.
where the numbers lie, because there's a new crop every year that move from preschool into K, and then we get the K from the outside world. And then we have, which is very unpredictable, knowing that K number. And then from 5 goes to 6, and then of course 8 goes to 9, and then we graduate. And you're hoping those all balance. But right now we're seeing a little bit of a not balance because we're having an influx moving in. So that's what the factors that are happening. But you'll see, I kind of just laid this out to show people kind of where we are. Where we are with EAs. And here's my first ask. Jack will talk about money after, as I said, when we get to money. But this is based on all those kids in that list I showed, and Pam asked a very astute question around the fact of, are some of these one-on-ones, are some of these shared, are some of these after? It so happens that in that list there is 7 kids that needed one-on-one support that we did not factor in when I did all of my planning last year. So that's my ask tonight, is for those 7 positions to be forward. And I listed up here number of vacancies we still have, and we're still filling some vacancies along the way, but these are in addition to, and they are at the school. I mentioned CMS, their numbers have increased, so there's 3 there. ADS, there's 2 there, with those are again move-ins, and then 2 at 2 again at Millbrook. So we're kind of we're there.
John, is that 4 and 3R, is that the number of vacancies or the number of EAs?
That's the number of EAs.
Okay, so are there any vacancies in 3R?
There's 5 current vacancies in that building, and yes, I believe 2 of them are in 3R right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And what often happens is if a student goes to 3R and we move them from one building to the other, instead of having to move an employee from a building, we usually go last in or vacancy.
Okay.
And if there's a vacancy, we move the vacancy. So sometimes you will see that happen. And it's kind of a specialized program, so often we'll hire for that program.
Yep.
That's, so you typically, we always seem to have, unfortunately, vacancies there because we're often, when a child moves there from another building, we're moving a vacancy versus having to disrupt an employee who is there. Or if there's someone that volunteers to go, we allow the volunteer to go and keep the vacancy where it is.
Gotcha.
Charter schools, this was asked of me, I think at the board, I believe Pam asked this question also. And she must know what's going on in the community. We've seen a steady increase in our charter schools, and not only an increase, the scope in the breadth. We're getting farther around the state with some of our charter schools. And charter schools are public schools, and parents have the right to place them there. It does not follow the IEP process. They can choose to place any charter school they want, and we have to pay for the special ed service in that charter school. We do an MOU every year with each of the charter schools. It's a legislative rule that we have to do an MOU with all the charter schools to define our services and our prices. And we do that each year. Jessica McKay, who is our coordinator of programming, meets with each of these programs every year and does this for services. And she case manages these students.
Can I just, the $330,000 estimate, does that include our staff time, or is that only services we pay for, contracted services?
That does not include our, like if Jess goes over and does IEPs and observations and maybe works with a child, she does it strong foundations once in a while, it doesn't include her time.
And do we, so if someone went to the Nashua charter school, we would have to figure out how to provide services
Correct.
in Nashua?
Correct. Often it's a conglomerate between districts. We call around. So if, for example, I'll talk to Merrimack Valley. It's probably the one I talk to the most because we share a few of the local charter schools, and we'll say, hey, do you have anyone going over here? And if so, I'll cost share with them. We'll figure out what the person's time is spending with our child, and we'll cost share that out.
Do you cost share out when you're doing the charter, like a school psychologist or a speech therapist? Is that in the $330,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that we cost share all those out typically, unless we may have someone that goes to multiple charter schools. We sometimes do a contracted service person that will go to multiple charter schools, and we'll do that.
But if it's our staff member, do we send our staff members over to charter schools? I know we had in the
have
past.
one that goes over to Strong Foundations now.
And is that included in this cost?
No,
And what do we get reimbursed from the state for this?
we get our normal special ed numbers because they fall into our numbers for special ed
Do we get the special ed costs?
because we do those services.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we do. Okay. Then, good news, foster numbers are going down considerably, and I want to have some good news in my chart here, so
Thank you for this slide.
I found this, and I said I'm putting that up there because foster numbers are going down, and DCOAF has been very busy, and a lot of kids have been adopted over the years, and I got to say, I give them kudos for finding home. We have a lot of younger fosters in Concord. I think some of that's to do with our just our location, and because of all the rural around us, that we get a lot of preschool, first, second graders who end up being adopted, which is nice to see. And sometimes older kids, but nice to see. So related services, you've seen a slide similar to this over in our board presentation. That's who they are: interpreters, nurses, consultants. Dan Carter for Medicaid. SLP, OT services for charters, we talked about that. AAC specialists, which is augmentative communication, nurses, consultants, interpreters, tutoring and nurses up there twice.
3 times.
Yeah, but those are different kind of nurses, and that's why.
Got it.
So, again, I would like a different trend on this, but it's going the opposite way, and that's because the needs are increasing. I mentioned that kids are identified earlier needs are happening. We're looking at a steady increase in this. Not a crazy steady, but a steady. You're seeing it. It's happening. Costs have gone up. We all know that with everything. Personnel has gone up. These consultants' prices have gone up. We have kids that we've kept in district that have a lot of needs, and some of that is we don't have the plethora of placements I would like to have for some of our more severe kids. It does not exist out there. They're far, far away. Without going into mass, we can't meet. We are better off ourselves providing the services here, adding some contracted services, and keeping them here in Concord. And that's the story for this chart. We have done that this year. And we have decided that versus keep on trying to visit a lot of placements or having a child like popcorn, go to one placement, come out of a placement, go to popcorn, come out of a placement. Let's try to provide it here. And we have utilized the high school, which has a lot of space, to be able to create some real alternatives for kids that we haven't done in the past. We've been very creative. In the long run, it keeps the district costs from jumping up too much, but it keeps this steady. It's a steady increase.
John, have you done any analysis or looking at other surrounding districts and whether their trends are the same as ours, or
Yeah.
is Concord a place where people tend to come?
So my data is 4 years old, but 4 years ago I did a complete analysis of all of that, and I did a study, and I brought in the Superintendent's Association to study all of our data, all of our incomes that come in and go out. I did that work, and it's steadily increased. I meet with the directors in the Lakes region monthly, and I meet with the whole state, and this is what's going on right now.
So it's happening everywhere?
Yeah, yeah. And there's still positions that people can't fill. I mean, it's really an employment shortage right now, so people have had to go, like busing, we've talked about that enough too. Had to go outside. You go outside, you pay what the cost is to get the people. But you need the people because you have obligations to the IEP. It's a vicious circle of supply and demand is really what's coming down to. And we're trying to, I shop it out. I won't, one thing over the years I've done is I don't have one vendor anymore. And there used to be one pretty solid vendor here in the district. And I have shopped it out to multiple vendors to try to do some bargaining, I guess is the best way to say it, that well, I can get it cheaper here, I'll go to this vendor. And I've done that purposely to give me a little bit of a conversation with them. I wouldn't call it leverage, but at least a conversation to say, I call one, I call the other, and I compare. I do some price shopping where it used to be with one, you took what you got kind of, and I've moved away from that.
Thanks.
Yeah. And again, where our placements are, you'll see that pretty heavy at the high school. I talked about that. I brought in a lot of services to keep some kids in school in the district. And we also, you'll see that nursing services are involved in some of these contracted services. That's why it's there 3 times. Just the placement of that. Nursing contracts, we've stayed pretty steady with this over the last couple of years. You'll see that the numbers are the same. Those are kids that are just moving through the system. We're still seeing preschool, though. We're seeing some fairly severely medically fragile kids coming into our preschool still. These are kids that are, really wheelchair-bound, lack of mobility. They need a lot of services, but it's our obligation to help them and service them. And the earlier we can intervene with them, the better they'll be in the long run. So, but that's where it goes. So, in conclusion, this is what it is. EAs, I need a little bit more. Charter estimates, need a little bit more. And behavior services and nursing costs, I need a little bit more. So, Jack, to you.
I'm gonna be a delayed game because my computer's doing an update while I'm in the middle of doing this, and it's at 5%. It already downloaded, but.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
while
we
you-
can certainly
Yeah,
ask
sure,
questions.
yeah.
So, just going back to charter schools for a second, when you said we get their regular, so my back of the envelope is we get about $22.98 for special education differentiated,
Do you know what
Aid,
the
is
cost
that-
is? What we get back?
So is that what we get times the 27? So we get about $62,000 for those 27 kids?
And then you'll get a percentage of that, which is now 66% of whatever our entitlement is.
Isn't that, are you talking about catastrophic
Yeah,
aid? Isn't that only over a certain amount?
yeah, like
Yes.
transportation's 59 or 61,000. Once you
About
exceed that.
60,000.
they'll plus
So
it.
over about 60,000.
Over about 60,000?
Yeah.
We haven't
Per
got the numbers.
student?
Yeah. So if I spend over $60,000 and I track, that's why it's so important to track all the services, all the
Right.
data, have that down. If I go over 60, I submit to the state, they give us about 66% above that.
But only if we hit that mark, so.
Hit the threshold, yes.
So not we might or may not be for individual charter school students. And I don't want to pick on charter school students. They are entitled to these services. I want to pick
Right.
on the state and just point out that these services are required legally as part of an adequate education and that they are not funding them. So, either for the students that come here or for the students who go to the charter schools.
And, I mean, in your long career, have you seen the state catching up, right? There's always gonna be lag time, right? Like you establish need and then hopefully the aid will follow. Do you notice that to be a trend? Can we expect the state to catch on to this issue and be more supportive in that way, or?
I haven't seen it in my career. Was that what your beginning question?
Yeah, just sort of like,
And
you
will
know, I mean, just.
will I see it by the end of my career?
Depends on how the litigation.
That depends when that is.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I'm just, I'm curious. I mean, with any need, you want to make sure that it's a trend before you reestablish
Right.
any, like any changes in
So-
large scale aid on the state or federal level. It takes time for them to sort of catch up to what's happening on the ground. And I guess maybe I'm being hopeful.
Right. Maybe it depends on who's the who always. They haven't reauthorized IDEA yet. It's been long overdue and they haven't done it. Some of the political atmosphere is why, but it hasn't been done. And I think that even IDEA, it's 2 years behind. So these numbers you're looking at are increased by almost 200 students from 2 years ago, and we got our IDA grant this year and it was less than it was the previous year because we hit the COVID dip.
Right.
Where we weren't identifying as many kids during those 2 years. So right now, if you go back 2 years ago, our numbers weren't as big as they are now because now we had all those kids come out of COVID. We started to work with them again, started to identify. We end up with our numbers larger, but we're not getting the money for that right now. So that's kind of what happens. It's 2 years behind.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
You ready, Jack?
No, 7%.
Other
What have
questions?
you
So other questions?
I guess,
or I'll move
I guess
on to-
I was gonna say, I
Maybe
guess I'll ask the question, John, we talked about the fact that we're keeping students here in our district. And there's expenses associated with that, but that is still far less than if we would outplace them, right? Just to be
Yeah.
sure.
Your average placement right now is costing you about $110,000 right now before busing. So it's that's just
Per student,
per student.
which is, one, we like keeping kids close to home, but two, it has a huge impact on our budget.
Yep.
Thank you.
If there was something you wish you could recruit in terms of like services that we don't currently offer locally, is there a gap, like where we are consistently sending children to Massachusetts because of X?
Yeah. So where I think that states are all wonderful, but and I think that some other models out in the state there's a collaborative out in the Seacoast. It's called Seacoast Collaborative, and they've pooled resources in their local districts to create an alternative school. And we've done some with the MAP program. We have Second Start. We've been creative around those things, but they have regional districts putting in that lower the cost for all of us and take care of more of our kids in the region. I would love to see down the road more of a regional collaboratives happen for our more needy students, so we don't have to send them far.
Right.
There's nothing believe me, it's a hard decision to take someone out of their community, and you don't want to do that. But if you could create regional collaboratives, that there's a model on the Seacoast, but all of Massachusetts have them. They've done a nice job with this. That you know, a collaborative school district that allows for joint cost for staffing and things like that,
Yeah.
but can meet the needs of our heavily identified kids. We've talked about it in the lakes. There's some movement. We're working with the MAP program to make that more regional. I've been working with Bill Mealy over at Second Star and he's met with the Lakes directors last month because we're trying to open that up a little more and have more of a regional program so the costs aren't all on Concord.
Right.
They are spread out throughout the region, and other student districts can send into it. So that's where I think that we need to go. And we need to have a better connection with the medical world over the students that have real medical needs. It is, you know, I think I credit Jeff Dunn for this, and I have, that we hired a nurse practitioner. We're the first ones to do that, and that just having a position like that on staff allows us to really be in the communication with doctors and nurses and things like that, that I don't understand the lingo. I'm an educator. You know, our health care coordinator understands the language and can understand education in the mix between medical, and that's an important position, I think, to have, and we need to have more links when it comes to that.
Yeah. I don't know about other board members, but I certainly would be interested in hearing that sort of preliminary long-term proposal of like, what would a regional collaborative look like? How would we be proactive as a board in initiating communications, initiating financial proposals, that kind of a thing? Like, it shouldn't necessarily all fall on you as an individual. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting prospect, especially because I'm sitting here thinking about trends, right? And number one, how do we address the issue right now? And then how do we prepare for long-term strategies that give the taxpayers the savings that they would like to see?
Yeah, that's a great point, and, yeah, I'd like to see, you know, if we're looking at this, what would the next steps be that we would have to do? You know, this is not only our taxpayers, but the taxpayers of our neighboring communities
Right.
that could, you know, benefit from us taking steps to start moving in that direction. So any additional information you can provide in the coming months, let us know.
Yeah, and how we can help.
Yeah, and again, we're Concord, we're the largest in the area, so a lot of times this planning and organization comes from us, and that's kind of the hard thing.
That's good, yeah.
Carving that time to do that and finding the time to take that on is it's a big lift, because you have to, you know, every individual school board is individual, and that's the beauty of New Hampshire, and trying to get them to all think in this realm has to be something pretty collectively and done. So we've started, there's like 4 or 5 directors that we meet and talk about these things, so we're trying to start getting that off the ground a little bit in a few years.
Can we bring someone up from Massachusetts, one of the Massachusetts collaboratives, and invite our local school boards to come and have that discussion with a guest?
Be interesting.
Or
Yeah.
the Seacoast?
I think I'll have
Just the other thing.
to talk to our superintendent. She knows a little bit about the Seacoast. Maybe she
Yeah.
could help me find a
She's got
contact.
connections.
Yeah.
Maybe we just
Yeah.
get it to the
Yes.
school boards,
Yeah.
push them a little bit, because I'm sure they're all in the same place we are going, oh my God.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, this is a problem that's really, and if you've read anything, it's hitting everybody,
Yeah.
and hitting hard
Yeah.
quickly, so, things we can do to ameliorate the situation and save money down the road is I think very important, so.
I mean, a lot of them are town meeting towns, so maybe we look at something for April, since they're probably already
Yeah.
finalizing their budget.
Right.
It's not gonna happen this year.
Yeah,
No,
but
it's not gonna-
if we set a goal of having this
Yeah.
collaborative meeting in April, that would be great.
I think setting some milestones that even if we have to push them back a little bit here and there, at least gets us moving in a direction that I think I hear everybody wanting us to go. to.
Right, and I think that we have a nice partner in Second Start to take on some of these that they already have, it's their mission, it's the kind of organization they're doing anyhow. It's just really expanding, helping them expand what they're kind of started to do right now. And I've been working a lot with them the MAP program was a big initiative to get off the ground. It took a couple of years to get that off the ground, and now it's working, and it's now how do we get it out to the rest and start there at the middle, and then let's expand to other areas. Elementary has a need right now. It's going to be the next big thing.
Thank you. Other questions for?
Have we killed enough time, Jack? 'Cause we can keep going.
At this point, yeah. I was gonna say,
It's at
Jack, we're-
64%, so we're gonna let it continue. We'll just go out of order if that's okay.
That's
Can you-
fine. Thank you,
You don't have a
John.
presentation you can send me,
I
do you?
I don't have it shared, so, sorry, I didn't get there.
Yeah.
It was one of those days, you know.
Yeah.
So
So
are
what
we
I'll do
doing
is, let
next?
me start then with, how about I start with number 6, electric buses?
Okay,
Okay, so we can have a discussion about that. Everybody have this in front of them?
yes.
There's gonna be a handout anyway. I didn't have much else on the slide besides the grant and other, but I'll already entertain that. So, I know a little bit about the electric world, having one of these cars. And I think there's two buckets you could put things in. You could put it in my opinion, the Tesla into the vertical market, all integrated. Software, chargers, the car. That's integrated vertical market. What I consider similar to Apple. They control the whole process. Then on the right side, as it relates to these electric vehicles, you have everybody else. The challenge you have is you have this horizontal line, and you have somebody that makes a charger, somebody that makes the bus, somebody that makes software to manage it. And how do you put all that together with the expertise that we have? So I've been working with a company that will see if whether that works out, who does bring all this stuff together. But I'm also trying to price to you an a la carte, if we tried to do this ourselves, and if you do a full service model versus what the diesel buses cost. So let's try to step through it. I am still working with this in progress horizontal market piece of it, slide, and showing what the $10,000 payment is, the amount we're probably looking at for infrastructure, okay, that we'd have to spend to upgrade the conf in order to get the electric where it needs to be. Then we take what it is, and this is for 3 buses, by the way. All right, so you're looking at maintenance for the buses, which usually runs about, for these, they're estimating about $4,000, because they say it's about 40% less than a traditional bus. Fuel, we put at about $6,000, so there's the 18. And then you have the software and charger. Then you have staff time and the warranty risk. You know, if a battery goes in one of these things and it's not under warranty, especially as you get into the latter years, or somebody damages it, what does that mean? So you can see the first year you have a lot of upfront cost, and then after that, this is what those expenses are. I'm still not comfortable with the payment piece and just the first column where it says payment, because I don't know whether that should be dragged down. This is what I'm working with the vendor on, because I'm really trying to beat up the costs of full service versus what if we put this together, okay? So you see the bottom line is 1.447 million over, this is 12 years. And then you also have the grant that would be spent to buy the buses. So you're looking at 2.4 million all in for 3 buses. Okay? Yeah. So
Can you explain your staff, what is the staff time?
people that have to get on the phone and call the charging company because they say when they plug the bus in, it doesn't handshake and now it's not charging. Why isn't it charging? Well, that's the bus. The bus needs a firmware upgrade. Oh, we did the firmware upgrade. You got to go back to the charger because they all don't talk to one another.
And that's
So-
$25,000 a year?
That's just what they estimated at 0.2 of an FTE of somebody's time. Yes, you're already paying it, but are we trying to quantify cost? This is one of the things they suggested. So Could it be a little extreme? It might be, but I'm trying to find how am I allocating for these parts and pieces.
And the fuel cost you have is the same as the diesel fuel cost?
Yeah, because believe it or not, the electric and the diesel are almost comparable. So when this thing gets booted up, it's at 88%. I'll show you the calculation I've done and I've shared with them to beat it up and tell me where there's constructive, give me constructive criticism. Part of the challenge with the buses is when you get into the winter, you're gonna lose significant mileage. You might only get 70 to 80 miles out of a battery that's benchmarked at 140 when you're already losing 10% because of reserve, and you're gonna only charge the 90%, not 100%. So there's that component. I'm gonna move to the full service model because that looks very simple, right? 85.5 with a 3% escalation every year. What does that include? That includes the fit up of the comp, your electric charges with some guardrails around it, your maintenance of the bus, and your warranty of the bus for all 12 years. So you can see there's no maintenance, no fuel, because you just do the normal and they reimburse for it. So you put tires on it, they pay for it. Put windshield wipers on it, they pay for it. You put brakes on it, they pay for it. Okay? Now, in this model, you don't own the bus.
Yeah, this is like a lease.
Yep. They own it. The company is a company that is a for-profit company that takes all the deductions. They get all the tax benefits from it. So not only are you going to pay this $1,213,000, notice I put CSD grant applied, the $1,035,000 also goes to them that we applied for. So you're at $2.248 million. So
On top of the $1,035,000.
on top of the
No,
1.2
total.
million.
1.2.
Combining it.
So all that is out. So obviously, now when I move to the diesel column, if I took 3 buses and financed them conventionally, I did our bond rate of 3.4%. I did an annual payment with it compounded, with the interest compounded daily. 45,705 to finance 377 passenger buses. They're at 127,000 each bus. You're looking at $10,000 in maintenance per bus, so there's the 30,000, and I just put a 3% escalation on the maintenance. The fuel, about $6,000 per bus, and this is assuming the 177 days the kids, all these assume for fuel the 177 days, because we're moving kids. Obviously, if it's more, that's fine. And I'm also only assuming 65 miles a day. That's our round trip runs, not athletic trips, because it's likely when you get in the electric buses, unless you're running over to Bow, you're not heading to Londonderry and all with the buses. The infrastructure's likely not there to do that. So when you total up a diesel bus, you're looking at $1.138 million for the 3 buses, or a difference from the electric to the diesel of $75,000 more for the electric over the diesel. Obviously, the whole goal of that grant was to try to make them comparable. Without that $1,035,000, it's just not there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No.
So
The grand, I think I'm being
here's the
confused by the
question.
grand total 2.482.
Because that
Yeah.
$1,035,000 that you think you're getting,
But,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
but
Matt.
really what we're talking about is the 1,213 versus the 1,138
Or the 1 point.
1,447. I mean, the grant is,
Grant.
it's not the bottom line. I mean, it's the top line.
Right, I think the grand total is confusing me because
Yeah.
this is, let's say the very first situation, the à la carte situation, we have priced everything out, we've got this 1.4 million, but then you've added the grant money to our total expense, but the grant money is ours. So are you saying that
It appears here that grant money is a negative that should be subtracted from the 144.
As
But instead,
opposed
it's
to
added
added.
to the 144. So can you explain a little bit
because that money goes as well. You're spending that money that's not yours, plus you're spending your money.
So what you're saying
So you're
is,
saying it's costing us $75,000 more to use an electric bus than it is to use a diesel bus?
Or 3
Right.
electric buses.
Before the,
Three
Three
buses.
right. If you
25.
didn't have the grant, okay? The grant money's
Yeah,
being spent.
Right. It's being
If
spent
we didn't have
on the
grant,
buses?
We wouldn't even be considering
Considering
it.
it.
Right.
Exactly. But
Because it
I
would
need
be
to
one-
account for that
110.
expense, because
Right.
people might, if I didn't, and I just looked at it, oh, that's all it is for the electric, but no, the other 1,035,000.
That's for this, you're looking at this, that it is 75,000 for 3 buses, but what you're looking at is going forward, if you were buying another 15 buses, it would be much higher.
So you have your capital cost to first get in.
Yeah.
So part of our plan is to try to get the 3 up and operational, but build out for 10.
Yeah.
So that all you have to buy, you don't have the infrastructure
For the
cost the
chargers
first
and
time.
the
You'll have charger costs, because the charger and the bus, but you won't have the infrastructure, which is that initial money.
Which is the big difference, it seems like.
Now, if we were to actually control it as opposed to the full service,
Yep.
then we got 1,447 versus 1,138, which is more like $300,000.
Right.
I'm adding up this column, and I'm getting 1.34. What am I missing?
Which column?
The subtotal on the 10,000, the 400, the 170,000. I mean, I'm doing straight numbers. I wasn't going, and I'm at 1.34 million.
I don't have my thing for it to add up.
Here's
What
my
is it?
thought on this.
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead.
I think we should encourage the use of electric buses and explore it. I think we should, even though it costs $75,000 more, consider that. Now, let me ask you a question about the full service. You said that that's
never mind, I got it
all
right.
contracted, right?
Yep.
Do we own the charging after that's done, or do they own it?
They own it.
Yeah.
We own the infrastructure, we don't own the chargers. I think the question really is, what's the reality that those chargers will be around in 12 years? But if a charger goes bad, they replace it. That's under warranty.
You mean like the charger that's actually attached to the bus?
That you
Not
plug
the-
in.
No,
not
plug in.
Plug
Into.
You plug in.
the charger that you actually physically plug into.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between infrastructure and charger?
So the infrastructure is digging, getting the electric, the transformer and everything to be able to put that charger on
Got
to
it.
the
Okay.
posts to be able to plug into the bus.
And
Because-
would we build out for 10 with the full service plan too?
Yes.
Okay.
And the infrastructure's in that number. It's all in.
Would we be able to track the actual cost? Like, because a lot of what you,
Yeah.
I get what you're doing here, and it's good to see the worst case scenario, but this is like, assuming from the first year that we're going to have a certain amount of warranty problems.
Yeah.
And, where I could see some of that more at the back end versus the front end.
Sure, I agree with you.
So I'm just wondering, do we know how other school districts are looking at those costs or their actual experience?
So,
I know there's not a lot of experience, but there's some.
No. It's very difficult. There's a lot of hypotheticals. It's like, oh, you'll save 40% on your maintenance costs. I want to see what that actually is. So I'm working with the full service vendor and our bus vendor to try to develop this whole à la carte. That's why I say in progress, because it's not very easy to put this together. And as I've talked with districts that have bought, or people they referenced when they tried it themselves, they bought the charger thinking, okay, you just need the CSS charger or CCS charger. They buy that, and that's not compatible with that bus. Then they have to take that out and get something different. So is it truly that difficult? And what I'm finding out is there's no easy answers in trying to do this yourself. But you're going to commit to 12 years of a bus that, there's only 2-3 years worth of people using these things. So we're definitely going to be in the ground level of this. When I have asked districts and trying to understand the cost, I think it's trying to get into really the people that understand that. I spoke with a gentleman the other day in Vermont because I thought, okay, they might be a little colder. How's it running? They have a 25-mile route. They get done that 25 mile, they gotta plug the bus in, but he didn't know what the costs are, any of that, because he had just come in when they had already signed for this deal.
If we do this for the 3 buses.
Yeah.
And we have the infrastructure for 10, if we look at this and we have some actual data after a few years, can we, under this contract, still come in and say, okay, we'll keep those 3 under you, but we're gonna add
Right.
It's a good question.
3 more
Yeah.
under our own scheme,
Yeah.
because now we know what the actual, I mean, it feels hard for me to believe that they're losing money over, but they do have different, volume
Yeah.
and things like that,
Yeah.
so I get, but, and and this seems like a good way to mitigate risk, but I would like to be able to know in a couple of years.
Right. I've written the same question. Number one, with the full service, are there caps on what they provide? Are there fines, fees for readjusting our contract? And do we have renegotiation capabilities if we were to acquire more buses?
There are caps on it. You know, you do 11,700 miles.
So the mileage is the cap, not necessarily like my poor dog's health insurance is capped at, up to a knee replacement.
Yeah.
They're not going to pay for,
There's some other caveats as far as when they expect the bus to be used, like between the hours of 6 and 9 and 1 and 4.
Okay.
So I got clarification on that today because I said, you mean used? What if we have to come in? Because during the day, when you get into electric, you can get into demand charges. And we were going back on 30 kilowatt chargers, which is with a full service is what they're proposing, versus 60 kilowatt chargers. And the thing with the 30 is you're talking 2 or 3 hours to charge a bus versus a 60 might take 20 minutes to charge the bus. Okay, is there enough time for that bus to come back after doing its run, charge, and then head back out? So that's the kind of thing. And then are we going to have to be dealing with demand charges because we're charging midday? Because that's usually when those demand charges
Yeah.
hit.
So what
The
are you
meter
looking
is in
for?
their name.
Well, what are you looking for from us tonight?
All I'm trying to tell you is this is kind of where I'm at. We have to issue POs by the end of November, but apparently there is an ability to ask for a 90-day extension, which we're likely to ask because we definitely want to make sure if we're going to bring something forward to you that commits to 12 years, that we've vetted this out. There's also some other components because of the fact that they are a for-profit company, RSA 7223 as it relates to real estate taxes. The city will tax them for their part that they're going to use on that building in the comp. So we are working through that with assessment and the lawyers because that's just going to get passed on to us. So there's just these moving parts. Also, okay, is the agreement going to be between us and that vendor and then the city and us and our lease? Or is there going to be one between that vendor and the city and us and that vendor? So there's those components. And then obviously when you check to see with legal, it's all new to them, this whole
Yeah.
piece.
So, Jack, also
This
going,
is, I wanted to give you an update because you know you won this grant. We had mentioned
Right,
November.
we got to spend this money.
Yeah.
So we're going to be doing something
Yep.
in terms of how we're going to get
And I want to make
these
sure you're still
buses.
comfortable. So what
And
I'll
this
update
is the
you in
pricing
November
structure.
is
Yeah.
kind of more the details of the contract if we're going there. I'll hopefully have this à la carte to the best that we can where it is. And then we'll look for some more direction. But I wanted to at least give you a stepping stone update because there's just a lot to doing this.
so Jack, if you did this with a 10-bus investment in our infrastructure and all that, what if it was a 3-bus investment? Is it
Well,
much
that's
less
what,
or?
that's what this is.
This is
The full
3 bus.
service is a
Oh,
3-bus.
that's-
Oh,
Just-
so we wouldn't be able to make it a
Right.
Well, I have asked them, say, okay, if you're saying me these are the upfront costs, and what would it look if I added buses 4, 5, and 6 now? So they're putting that together,
Okay.
so I can get a little bit more realistic. But I also wanted to make sure you were clear that you didn't think that we were getting $1,035,000 and we were gonna have like electrical charges and maybe add the charger. I'm just showing you, you're looking at an annual operating bill of $85,000 year 1, $88,665 for 3 buses year 2. That's ongoing, so, but that's why I tried to make it comparable to a diesel too, if you had to buy 3 diesel buses.
Looking at your diesel, your assumption on fuel increase over the next 12 years is 3%.
That's what I did, yeah. And the advantage we have where being at the depot is we don't pay any road tax on that fuel. So I looked at our bills, we're on average about $3.30 for diesel. I'm sure if you were to go down to there, you'd be at $3.70
Yeah.
to $3.90. So, and obviously my thing that I have here, which I'll pull up because I'm finally at 100%, is adjustable. So I can put in the rates, and I've shared this with them to try to give me constructive criticism on, is my thought process right here.
Once the infrastructure, until the bonds are paid off, these buses are actually, even in your sort of worst case scenario, leaving out the infrastructure, cheaper per year to run
Right.
by $15,000-$20,000.
The diesel.
No,
No.
Compared, no,
comparing the three, I mean, because we got the grant.
Right. Yeah, if we don't have that infrastructure piece, I'm just gonna be curious what they come down to.
But like with the buses and because we don't have the payments on the buses,
Scratch that. I tried.
so.
Wireless
So,
didn't
and
work, but.
Can I ask also?
Yeah, sure.
The 400,000 in infrastructure, that's something that is things that are going to be built and will stay with us,
Well, I'll stay with the comp.
stay with the comp.
Yeah,
So the full service plan does not include that 400,000.
it does. They're including, yep, I'm gonna show you right now.
But I'm just saying, like,
We don't
they
keep
own
the
the buses,
infrastructure.
we don't with the full service. They take charge of everything. It's a full package deal, but say after however many years, they are like, we're gonna take in our buses and leaving, that infrastructure is still gonna exist at the comp.
That's correct.
So they are essentially investing in our permanent infrastructure, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
Because they'll depreciate it, they don't care after that.
But
So-
it's only for 3 buses.
So if you look at the comp, there's a transformer here. And the plan is to splice before the transformer and working, they're also, they coordinate the utilities as well, the full service. They're gonna run trench a line from here to here. There's, what do they call them, the pilings, those metal, cement poles. So behind there, there'll be a transformer, and then along here would be the electric buses. That would be the plan.
And how close to the salt pile are they?
The salt pile's right here. So, in that, remember the 35,000 you
Yes.
appropriated? The plan they're looking at right now, and we sat last week, is to move the buses out to here.
Okay.
Now, obviously, we do that, then we have to move this infrastructure.
Right,
So, we can, timing-wise, it's all not gonna work. So we either wait, which means the grant gets forfeited, or we do this and see, because I have no idea how long this is gonna come to fruition. You know, if I come to you next year and they say, okay, they want 400, say 250,000 a year for 10 years to do that, because it's $2.5 million. You might say, no, you know what, let the salt sweep it or something, I don't know.
Is there any reason, I'm sorry, I'm just asking
No.
very basic questions at
That's why
this
we
point.
wanted to do this.
Is there any reason why we would build out infrastructure and store electric buses in a different location than the comp? Because it sounds like to me the city isn't investing in electric buses anytime soon. It's essentially specialized equipment, that's gonna be mixed with all of our regular, like, will the mechanics that we have here also be able to work on the electric buses, or will this full service package will just be a completely different staff? Like, can or should we, or would you recommend decoupling the electric bus situation from our regular bus?
No, because you're still gonna have the general mechanic, plus the other thing that they'll get trained. So I'm gonna call them a level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1 is gonna be your basics, you just need to be aware of the battery, but they still do the normal tires, brakes and all.
Sure.
Level 2, they're a little bit more into the electric. Level 3, they're hugging the battery. Our people won't do that.
Okay.
So they'll get this level 1, level 2 certification. We get to level 3, it's likely gonna be the vendor, if it's full service,
will
or it would
cover
be
level 3.
our vendor coming in to service the bus, yeah. And as it relates to other places, the one thing I thought of as we get into the middle school is if you build out the infrastructure there,
Yeah.
you could potentially put electric buses there.
And also charge up electric cars?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's money to do that. And we're having discussion about that. So,
I was wondering, and this, of course, it's not our facility, so it's hard, but do we know how much solar we would have to invest in to charge these buses on a regular basis? Like,
I don't. It's a 229 kilowatt battery that's in that. My car is 81. And when I was at Oyster River, I plugged my car in off that little tower they had, and I was getting 23 miles an hour. I don't know what it would take. I have no idea. I'm sure you could probably trickle charge it, but I don't know for sure. But what the future is this V2G, where those things are basically sitting out batteries and they're selling power back. That's what I think this whole concept is, but Unitil's not there in our discussions with them. And then you were asking also about the city. So what the city's trying to electrify is some of the more simpler units, like the water thing that rides around with the little light, ding, 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 and gets the billing. That's something that will work. Dump trucks, plow trucks, that stuff's not there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, and what we're seeing with the buses, the Thomas buses that we buy, they have the traditional transmission in it, but they're going to direct wheel. What we're told is by the spring, where the motor is at the wheel, which is similar to my car. Now, if you look under there, you'll see the long transmission to it. So they're trying to retrofit and learn more of these buses, but it's a good discussion. I mean, I think you could see by the numbers, it does true it out. That grant really helps get it there. It's a matter of, okay, what path do we go? And my discussion with our bus vendor is the nice thing about the full service, he said, having watched this over the 2 years, you have everything from being up in Maine where they try to hang a charger off of a telephone pole, luckily not going to fly in Concord, to somebody that does soup to nuts. They coordinate the utility company, the digging of that, all that. And you don't pay a dime until those buses are up and running. Because if we had to spend the money, we had nowhere to, they're just going to sit.
it would be good if we could figure out something with the city so that we're not in a position where we have to move this in a couple of years.
Yeah.
That even if it's closer to the area where they think they're gonna move the buses, if we're on the other edge.
Yeah, so the other part we thought was here.
Right.
Because if we took this to where their signs are and we did it here, then you'd be there. But if you put the transformer, you could just flip and be on this side,
Yeah.
all electric. So it might be worth having the
Talking to
discussion,
them.
we just go right there
Yeah.
out of the gate.
Right, I agree with Pam, like,
Yeah.
to know that we're investing together in a 10 to 12-year,
Yeah.
understanding of where the infrastructure is gonna go, where the buses are gonna go. It's settled ahead of time.
But their plan is too, with some of the upgrades, as we said, we picked up the portion of that analysis of that building that was built in '89, is my understanding. They have enough electrical capacity in there to be able to do some upgrades that they need. So we've thought, we don't want to jump off their transformer and use up what they have. We'd rather just do this from the beginning, meter our buses, and then this way, if they want to add electric for whatever their fleet is, they have the capacity.
I mean, I think that makes sense. I just think we wanna
Yeah.
do it once.
Sure.
Once. Once is good.
Well, especially if we move from that salt barn, it would make
Right.
Yeah.
sense that it's there.
And
Okay.
Do we have to decide, as a board, does it need to go to a vote to ask for that 90-day extension, or you guys will handle that?
Why don't I come back to you next month so you're aware, and I don't think we need you to vote at all. Ellen can do it, but I just want to keep you apprised
Yeah.
of what's going on and where we're going.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I would
okay.
assume that the board would be supportive
I would
of
think
that
so.
extension.
I wanted to show you where I'm at now, just so you
Yeah.
could see, okay, I didn't want you to get surprised by, what's this, 85,000 a year now, for plus 3% for,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of time going into trying to get this
Yeah,
where it
it's-
needs
I mean,
to
it's
be and do the right
nerve-wracking.
thing.
You know, I mean, the technology is advancing so quickly.
It
I'm
is.
already worried about the batteries in the buses that we're getting becoming obsolete when the next technology comes through. Like,
Yeah.
I understand that it's a community investment, and I'm glad that we have the grant money, and I'm glad that we're forward-thinking in this realm, but it is inevitable that something in this package will become obsolete before we even have a chance to buy more buses.
Or
Yep.
buses and chargers could
Yeah.
become. Jack, do we need to have the board to address the 90-day extension in the November board meeting? Because you said by the end of November, so we won't have a
Right.
second board meeting until December.
Why don't we put that in the superintendent's report or under finance, and we'll talk about it.
Let's-
This way they all hear this, because they
And-
understand what's potentially coming, and then, you know, if they're comfortable with it,
I agree,
with us.
because then maybe we can vote on it then.
Yeah.
And then we're not coming up against that
Yep.
deadline, and the
Yep.
whole board gets an opportunity to weigh in and vote.
Yep, and you're learning as we're learning along the way, okay?
Thank you.
You got it. All right, now, speed rounds.
Yay.
Huh? Let me go back. Oh, so to finish off the electric bus, remember I said issue POs to the vendors November 24th. I said likely request the extension, but all final paperwork needs to be done by May of 26. And it's also my understanding, just so you're aware, we're likely not going to apply. January, there's another round coming out, but if we don't even have these going yet, we just don't see the need to try to do anything until we get our feet wet with this, okay?
Agreed.
All right, heading back to the beginning. I know it seems like a lot, but we'll move. Okay, see, John already did his. So, right now, the auditors are here this week. They've had to put us off a little bit because of staffing, but they are here now. And unaudited, what we've submitted to them is that FY24 wound up with a year-end fund balance of an extra $3.3 million, about that, 3.354. We anticipated 2.8 million that you need for this budget. So that's an additional $554,000 that there is. If you do nothing, it will just go back onto the, apply to the tax rate or lower the amount you need to raise in taxes, and that's what happens. If on October 28th, 7 votes, you can appropriate it. We do have a plan in here for that, considering what you heard tonight, okay? But I just want to let you know, we'll have a whole expense and report side, you know, once they've solidified that they agree with all our numbers, okay? So for the current year, this is the budget that you passed on March 27th, the $107,910,191, or 1.58% increase. So these are some of the changes to the budget based on things that happened after you voted for the budget. So trash disposal, it's been about from like 54, you may have heard that at the budget meetings, that this is going to be like the onslaught that's going to be coming, because they had a heck of a deal for quite a while. I just remember watching that meeting. So trash is 65,000 just for the normal pickup trash. That's going to go to 83,000. So that's a $17,000 adjustment. Water and sewer. Water went up 7% and 8.5% for sewer. So we're looking at another 12,000. The custodian wages, if you remember, you approved a interim bargaining agreement to try to raise the wages to attract some more people up. That's the 135,000 that we had talked about in May. That cover that. Transportation, student services, that'll be a discussion a little later. That was actually after my electric bus conversation, so I'm a little out of order tonight, but transfer to the Facilities and Renovation Trust Fund, put an additional $779,743. That would be part of your 5% contribution. If you remember this year when we did capital facilities and debt service, that we did not put in the full 5%. We're proposing to do that here. The bond payment, which I handed out, I believe, the bond schedule, and if I didn't, you should have that in front of you, because that's now the official document that we'll pay off of. Well, we get an invoice, but this is what'll be in our budgets now for the next, till 2045. We had budgeted $1.924 million, $625, because that's what they projected, and they thought we would make the total payment all in 1 year. Based on timing and being at our interest rate and paying a little bit less in interest, we have an interest payment this year of $395,390, And then next year will be the full principal and interest payment. So we are over budgeted in that line because we're not making a full payment this year. Because it's not, if you look on this schedule, you see the first payment is $395, $390. And then next year.
So are you reducing the budget now to 395, or are you leaving the 19?
Correct. So it's a reduction of 1.5. See, that's the budget, and I put revised budget, what the new number will be.
These are the adjustments. And Jack, just
Yeah.
for the sake of anyone who might be watching and doesn't realize we've jumped topic, these are not electric buses. This is our these are the buses that we are ordering that
Oh.
are replacement buses, that are standard diesel buses that
Yeah.
just we need to do every periodically to keep our bus fleet up.
Yep, to be
Yeah.
within 10 years.
I just want to
Yes.
make sure that, since we went from one topic to the next, I didn't want anybody who might be watching to be confused about that because we didn't address it directly.
Overwhelming of that is HVAC.
Right.
1.5 million is for the buses, financed over 10 years. The HVAC is over 20. That's the combined payments. I have the breakdown if you wanted to see it by each.
That's okay, I just wanted to be clear
Yeah,
that what we were spending on.
I didn't notice the bus
What do we
piece.
expect the payments to be next year?
1,822,000.
1.8 million.
Okay, so you'll need another 1.4. And then the student services appropriating $600,000 to accommodate what John had brought up tonight. So all in all, the overall expenditure adjustment is increasing $15,675 for the purposes of the tax rate.
Can't you find the
I know,
$15,000 somewhere?
just taking out
Josh?
Kathleen's contingency.
Oh, yeah. So that's one component. I'm going to show you all the other components.
Yes, that's.
All right. Because, and regardless, your whole thing's going to change because we haven't got the assessments yet.
Right.
So once the
Yes.
assessment, that's all going to change. Okay. So on the adequacy side, we're having a shortage of $590,748. So that's a shortage of revenue. Whether you change it or not, the state will change it because that's the number that we're getting, 18,434, not the 19,000 they gave us as a draft last year. And then Deerfield tuition, we budgeted 160 kids. We're down to 149 kids, so 11 kids times 18,557 gives you that shortage of 204,000. So we're short on revenue 713,000. You want to find the 713,000? So
Kathleen's contingency.
we're looking, you're staying pretty much in your appropriation. It's just raising the money to be able to do that. We're not requesting more except for that 15,000. And then the additional appropriation is appropriating that 554,941.92, which is the amount of over from last year, and putting that into the the special ed trust fund in order, an up to amount in case he needs it. Make sense?
Do we have we gotten any sense from the city what, I know you conservatively budget real tax-based growth. Have you-
I did very much conservative.
Yeah.
So you think it'll
We
be,
don't know.
you think the tax rate impact will be less than we predicted? Even with this additional revenue
Oh, yeah.
shortfall?
Oh, yeah. If watching their meeting, what they put in versus what I put in, yeah. I think we're gonna do okay, and I think we have to figure out how do we not go down so much that then the next year you
Jump
have,
up.
When will we get the numbers from them?
I'm gonna anticipating in the next week.
So before our October 28th?
Oh, yeah, that's the whole, yeah, I need
Still
to have
think it
it.
would be great if you found the 15,000.
But
can work
not
on that.
much, not much before. So, yeah.
Well, they didn't have them last year for our final,
No.
no.
Right.
No,
So,
Okay, so that covers the 25 budget. One more slide. This is just,
Starting to get-
I'm not gonna have you do anything. I'm just seeing a trend as it relates to dental. That's running at about $88,000 a month, which is a little over $1 million. Again, you have that health risk reserve. We budgeted 856. Right now, I'm showing we're 33,000 to the good, so we have a lot of unfilled positions. So it's just higher than what we're, and we've seen that go up post-COVID. The electric, we budget 1.155 million for all the facilities. What I don't know is what the new HVAC equipment will do to that. Is that gonna make it more? I'm only thinking more, because now we have dehumidified air in those buildings.
The community power rollout,
Yes.
are those rates better or worse than what we are currently paying for electric? I know we have
So-
long-term contracts for natural gas, right? Do we have for electric?
Yep, we just renewed that coming this December, and it's crazy.
gas.
When we started, it used to be you'd get the bids and you had 30 days to send it back. I get the thing, I have to tell them by 2:00. If not, you get a new rate. But it's going down about 2 cents a kilowatt cheaper. So I
Natural
locked
gas
in.
or electric?
Yeah, natural gas.
What about, so my question was about
Yep.
community power, the community power rollout and electric, and our electric rates.
Yep. So that doesn't apply to the commercial side. I think
But
it's
you
only
can
for the
opt in.
residential. Yeah, but I think it's only residential, and we're not the rates. I was reading that brochure that came home.
Yeah, and it looked like you could opt in. I don't know what rates they were
Yeah.
offering. I guess I'm wondering is if we can do better if we join with community
It's worth
power.
looking into.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll check it, but I because of the size of what we use, plus we're also trying to work that whole thing with the solar panels that are gonna go on, and then hydropower. So I don't know. I'll find out either
Okay,
way.
thank
Okay, you're welcome. And then, the other one I didn't put on there was water sewer, because I don't know how when they do the dehumidified air, you have that drainage, like I've seen it in the newer schools, they dumping the condensate down the drain, so that can impact sewer. So I'm trying to understand that component too. And then finally, the culvert, which, if you remember from the summer projects, capital facilities committee, and in the budget, there is this,
Do you mean the sinkhole?
the sinkhole.
Yeah. The sinkhole
Put
is
it
a
frank,
result of the
frank.
culvert.
It is, yeah.
Well,
So-
the sinkhole's a result of
Is this
the.
our problem or is this the
culvert.
city's problem?
It's on our property.
It's our
That's
problem.
our problem.
Well, I know it's
Probably
on
could
our
be the city.
property,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Could be the city's
Yeah.
problem in other
Matt will
locations. but
update
for
you.
here it's
I
us.
just want to let you know, we budgeted 70. We don't know what this could be, and what the repairs
more than
are.
70.
It's another reason we should stop building our schools on top of rivers, streams.
Well, the
brooks.
Well,
wetlands thing,
the
yeah.
70,000 was just to
To
essentially pay for the
study.
assessment of what we needed to
Yeah.
do, right? It was certainly not an anticipation. that-
Yeah, we were hoping to get in there and be like, they just need more dirt,
Yeah.
but no.
Did
That's,
we anticipate any additional costs from the auditorium issue, whatever the auditorium issues were?
yeah, whatever it has to do with the stage and the couple feet clearance that you need to get through, but Matt's working on it.
Okay,
He'll
so,
update you.
but it won't be a big,
No, that won't be a big deal.
Yeah.
We'll make it work. We'll make it work within the 15,000.
I don't want to see the 15,000 on the
Right.
28.
Okay, but these were pictures that he had shown you before, so I was just reiterating that, and he's working it. They have sent drone cameras down and everything. They're working on it between the engineers and site people. So, okay. The next best thing. So the 26 budget. So you have teacher negotiations next year. You'll have also the negotiations, whatever the 5 you do this year will impact next year. You have New Hampshire retirement. On a good note is those rates did go down a little bit. I think we went from 13.53 to 12.75 for non-teacher, and for teacher from 19.64 to 19.23. Not big moves, but at least it didn't go up. Health insurance, you already heard my spiel on that, so that's a different story. The HVAC bus bond, okay, that will be the second year of that, but that's where it'll be a principal and interest payment, okay? And then the middle school project, assuming there's no delays, there will be some type of borrowing for that if construction is starting in January. Then your utilities, electric and natural gas, we'll see how that goes depending on the weather. And how the buildings, as I mentioned, with the new HVAC systems, we probably won't see much for 26. We'll have to think about the high school and what that impact is, and I'll see if I can work with the train engineers on that. Building maintenance, snow removal and grounds, you may see some proposals for that in this upcoming budget. Curriculum, instruction, and assessment, I put that down even though Kim was not here. wanted to vouch for there, and student service costs. And then I put tuition, parentheses, agreements. I know we have a tuition agreement, but who knows what comes down the road. And then I'm always trying to be mindful of also the sister government, the city's budget. And then we're in a biannual, so what's the state going to do at the state level? And then Medicaid reimbursement. And John, I don't know if you want to mention anybody. I know we have somebody at a conference right now because
Yep.
our understanding is that is changing.
Yeah, there is new legislation, new laws around Medicaid reimbursement. It's really going to shift the current way we do it in a way to a much more of a already medical model than we're already trying to overlay on schools around our services. We're going to have to be very tight on how we manage that. I've talked a lot about Jack. It's becoming a very intense job to oversee and manage Medicaid right now. And some of our revenue this year was down because of that intensity, and the companies we were formerly using couldn't keep up with the amount that we were producing. So we fell behind a little bit in our billing, and you'll see that. Next year we'll catch up for doing it, and we've gone with a new company. We've signed a new contract to move towards a company called Relay, which will much more user-friendly platform designed for educators that will help us a little more. So it's not an easy process to procure that money back to the district, but we're working on it. Dawn Silly right now is actually at the national conference in Denver, Colorado. Right now, learning about the new changes in the law, so she'll come back with some more information. And I'll present at some point. I'll bring Dawn forward to talk about some of the changes to that law and what it's going to affect our
Are you
students.
going to need more staff to support that?
Possibly.
John's like,
You know?
That's a
you
good
handing them
answer.
out? Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I don't know enough yet. It's not to the, like anything, when they make laws and changes till it gets down granular to what I actually have to do.
Yeah.
It's not there yet. So right now it's kind of the big overview of here's the changes. Now what that looks like for us to get our money back is not there yet, and we're working with a consultant right now to help us kind of get that done right now and understand it a little more. So could it be more personnel to handle the billing aspect of it and doing that? It could be more support personnel down the road for that.
Okay, so that's just the big picture, 30,000 foot view.
30,000 feet, not dollars,
Right, yeah.
because we're trying to save 15,000.
Electric buses.
I don't think that's unreasonable.
No, actually, the other thing I would say, and it's a small component, but it came up multiple times in here. Can we ask, just somewhere along the line, just put in Mr. Cashman's ear about maybe reducing our water use and effluents, as well as to be able to reuse water or go to gray water, or just take a look at what we're doing with it.
Yep.
It's good not only because it'll keep our costs down, and like I said, it's small, it's also from a sustainability point of view, a good practice for us to just take a little, maybe do an assessment of that.
And I think they did talk about some of that with the middle school, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with the middle school,
Yeah.
but we have,
But
all the
easy.
other schools, we're dumping
Yeah.
it down the drain.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to think about that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this board at one point had a sustainability subcommittee. Does that
we did.
exist anymore? I mean, we have the sustainability.
It was
committee.
it was somebody who was meeting with the
Right.
city, but
Because we support the city and their sustainability goals, and that's a topic for a different day as to what our ongoing things with the city and our commitments or people
Right.
being there.
I was just
So,
curious, I
good
mean, Matt
point.
has a lot on his plate, and I want to make sure that if
Yeah.
he needs support in terms of like direction from the district / the board, maybe the committee's the place to
No, that's a great
start
point.
that conversation.
And probably we should refer this
Yeah,
to the
we did have a
sustainability.
committee, but it's
well, we can
been
start.
more of a thing.
We're a little busy right
Yeah.
now, I
Right.
can imagine, and we're already talking sustainability, just very specifically to, the middle school
Middle school,
project. so.
correct.
Okay, I'll move on to my last topic. We might have a
Please.
non-public session, just so I can give you some background as it relates to more information on a van. But just let's talk about how that transportation affects the 69 that are on here. But let me just give you a high level where we started to go as it relates to van transportation. So simply put, we went with a district-owned model. Obviously, it's similar to the buses. You have the initial capital cost that you're going to have. So a wage and benefit, the driver, we estimate at 46 annually. Then if you have to have a monitor on there, it's 39,000. Then if you need a van, say it's a $45,000 van and you finance it for 5 years, then you have to add all the equipment to it, which is audio, video, the little flag that goes, the little stoppage signs, fuel about $2,400 a year, and then maintenance, that's tires, brakes. I'm sure they're gonna get, they'll be roughed on. So you're looking at $100,000 for the bus. That per day then is, if you divide that by 177, that's 565. Okay, now granted, if you go into the summer,
100,000 a year?
well, it'll go up.
Is that for
Well, I know,
one van?
That's one van.
One van
Yep,
per year,
yeah.
okay.
Okay? Now, if you go to a third-party vendor, which is à la carte, meaning, okay, a pickup and drop-off is $400, in this case, $500 a day, if they need a person to drive locally and the bus monitor is on there. So that's $88.5 just for that. And that's, you sign up, you need them for a week, kid leaves, that expense stops. You're still going to own the one that are left. So that's $500 a day. If you go to, if they're outside of Concord, goes up a little bit, about $100 difference, okay, roughly. So now you're at $88.5, and then the $17.7 for the monitor, you're at $600 a day. So you can see you're within there, owning versus third party. The other expense you have to start counting in, we could not put these vans up at the comp, there's no room. So you need a separate facility. I'm estimating that at $44,400. That's utilities, renting a facility, and then you're gonna need some type of supervision at that facility. So I put, quote, assistant director. I don't know what I call the title, but
Right.
I don't think, we already talked about, if we remember, we talked about vans and them going home. That's not gonna happen. They're gonna need a place to go. Not like some of these third parties that you see them in their driveway. And then you're gonna need some type of fleet management service or software to track the vans, GPS, and everything, and scheduling it. So that's an additional 162 that will likely climb as well. So just throwing those numbers out there.
And is the 500, is that what we actually pay?
Yes, that's what we pay now.
But we
Third
pay
party?
that, do we pay that per child?
And no, it's for the van. So if there's three, that three that can get on there, that's what we pay.
Okay.
So.
Why is the monitor expense for an owned vehicle higher than the monitor?
Because we pay better wages
Yep.
Right.
and retirement and
So
other
that's
Health
like
care.
it's sort of a union
Yeah.
Yeah.
versus non-union position.
So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, full-time, part-time.
So
How many vans, we're talking about one van.
That's just one
but-
van.
But how many vans would we, because these are,
probably wanna
these are
s-
distributed over how many vans there are.
Yeah.
So to take a look at it.
So right now, you're looking at 69 kids that are being transported on this list. Most of them are Concord to Concord. But
10 vans? 5, 10, 15?
10's a good guess, I'd say, to start. Again, till you get it up and rolling and doing
yeah,
it.
I would go 10. I'm not going to go what was suggested, which is higher than that. but
Yeah.
Well,
10 would be a respectable start.
so then if we're looking at 10, then that's 16,000
Well, you still have,
added up to there and then divided by,
Right.
yeah,
We
you're
have
looking
to
at $1
add-
million
well,
to get it.
up to, and add that to 10, multiply it by 10, and then compare that to our apples to apples type of a thing.
So
But
we,
it still looks very close.
So
you got to ramp up.
the
and build up.
feasibility of owning our own fleet, I think we had mentioned that it could potentially be a cost sharing or revenue generating fleet. do you think that is a realistic expectation that the vans could be used for multi-district? You know, like we would contract out with Merrimack Valley, or we'd contract out with a nearby community.
I think if there's software to manage that, to help manage it, it's almost like an Uber for student driving. It really is.
You may need more than 10 if you're going to do that.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
yeah.
I think I was asked the question, how many we need to make our needs would be 10. If you wanted to do that, you're talking more.
Right.
But that would lower this
Yeah.
per bus.
Right, it's an
But then I also
investment.
don't see any risk, like insurance or risk management. It's just, we have risk associated with this one. We don't have as much risk over on that
I
option.
don't know about that. Do we know how many, so it's how many go in the day, but are we planning the routes, or, so are they the most efficient routes possible? Like, how much are we actually spending per child per day on that? Because that would be helpful to understand, like, if they're not doing 10, whatever the bus capacity is, 10 kids on a bus, they're doing 2 here, 3 here, then we might be paying more than if we could devise more efficient
Yep.
routes.
Because right now, they said 55 to 60 kids a day, 6 different companies that we're using to get
Well-
this done.
Yeah.
And the next question comes is, are the buses somewhat interchangeable, or do we need a special bus for
Right.
these 2 people, a non-special bus for these 12
Right.
people, because that will alter how
Yeah.
we would be
This is
able to
this is a
divide.
van, so I think the
Or van.
go-to standard right now is a Sienna, if you can get them.
Yeah.
Going on Grappona today, I had one, so whether it's available or not, I don't right now. So you have that. And then the other piece is, when we look at this list, is it possible to go to a non-CDL 12 to 14 budget bus to be able to get a driver and maybe pool more? But that bus is like $84,000.
So again, the ideal, and we're talking about individuals with disabilities on these
Right.
buses.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes we don't always behave on our buses.
Right.
And we have to give 2 or 3 to a van to separate them enough to get them where they need to go and back. That's the reality of the world, of what we is. Not, it happens. People go through things happen. That's kind of what it is. Sometimes there's mobility issues. So you have specialized, accommodations for that. There's a myriad of it. So it's not as easy as a math problem of you have this many kids and this many passengers per van, and we're going to buy this many vans. It goes way deeper than that on some of this.
But given what we're spending, it's a math problem and a person problem worth spending.
Right.
I don't know if Terry's new software can help
Sure.
this, but
Right, like, from my perspective, well, there's 2 things happening here. One, we're seeing a need, right? So we're exploring possible solutions. There's nothing wrong with doing this math and pursuing it further. And number 2, a private company is expecting to generate revenue. So if a van company is figuring out the benchmark for investment in order to achieve revenue, we can treat it similarly, right? And so if our investments are comparable to an outside company, and we also retain control of potential revenue generators, then I could see this balancing, like I could see this being a net positive for us.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a huge ask for staff to come up with a proposal that we can say yes to, because how do you know how many vans you need, how many drivers you need, who's gonna show up on what day, how the software is gonna work? Like, these are all big questions. But I'm still interested in the idea, because we have had so many conversations about when we bring things in-house,
It'd be
things
great.
tend to be cost savings, right?
Yeah.
So,
There's a value to having your own people.
yeah.
Well,
And, yeah, I mean, directionally, I totally agree with Cara. I mean, I think having control of it ourselves has a lot of benefits. And to your point, I mean, yeah, they're making money somehow.
Right.
So if they're making money, we ought to be able to save money by doing it ourselves.
We do have higher wages.
We do. But let me ask,
But also that brings with it people
Right.
with more
I was
accountability.
gonna say, more accountability, more.
Stability, hopefully.
Yeah.
And if you can get into the sharing, if we can figure out that model.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's a
think John
complicated piece.
hits it on the head. I mean, there may be a need of, I think districts would feel comfortable with other districts. And I think we would want to be probably as compliant with things as, I don't think we're going to be putting magnets on the side of the van and, I don't know.
Right.
But
We probably need the little.
the other thing that's not included in here that I think we need, and you may have information
Sure.
on this, is, so third party, is the number of third parties that are offering this service increasing and increased competition will bring lower costs, or is it decreasing and we could see costs? This is a 1-year snapshot. Looking
Yeah.
down 10 years.
Yeah.
Are those costs going to escalate much higher than if we had our own? And we need that kind of information as well. Your best guess. I know it's a.
Yeah.
They have steadily, over the last 4 years, they have steadily increased exorbitantly. And there's new companies popping up every day.
But the-
Because it's a moneymaker.
But the
And-
costs have
and to your
increased
point.
more than, inflationary costs for operating this, and that's a question I have to throw out there.
Yeah, I don't know yet,
The
yeah.
estimate.
Yeah, right now, it seems pretty balanced, but again, that's without bringing in revenue. But that's kind of what it would be. It'd be pretty balanced. I don't know if you'd, the problem is, in the startup, I'm not sure you'd save money in the startup. Long run, I'm pretty sure you would, having watched the trends over years of how these buses have increased and what they've done.
You guys have any sense of, I mean, I keep on reading articles about how everybody's having a hard time getting bus drivers, yada,
Yeah.
yada. I know these are vans, so it's not quite as, restrictive as far as licensing, but any sense of our ability to get people to actually drive these things?
Right. We buy a bunch of vans and then nobody
I don't
wants to
know to
drive
drive
them.
Yeah.
Well, we can do one of two things. It's 20 after. We can go into a non-public session, talk a little further, or we can table this till November. Defer to you.
What does anybody think? I am getting the impression that we do want to look into this a little bit
Sure.
more, but we
Yep.
have questions.
Yep.
And,
Because I have some answers.
I'm going
I
to
just
direct
wanna-
you a little
Okay.
bit towards, we've directed you some questions.
Yep.
Is it worth, in your opinion, covering what we may need to do in non-public, or should we wait till the next?
I'm fine with waiting till November.
What
as long
about
as
the
yours are
board or
comfortable.
the rest of the committee?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
I don't think there's a.
Could you explain just briefly why we would have to go? Is it because we'd be revealing personnel data, or, I'm just wondering what
It's more the last item.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
On
That's-
collectively bargaining?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay.
If you want to hear
Thank you.
that, fine. If
Thank
not,
you. I just wanted to understand, or.
I'm fine waiting until November.
Good.
okay.
Yeah, I think
This
this
is a-
this is just the beginning.
Yes, but it's good
but-
to start this budgetary thing
Yeah.
before the budget's
Yeah.
decided.
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing to pursue.
Okay.
And thank you, because I know it's
Yes.
more work for you guys to have to do that research. So.
No, but we're always trying to look for the future and.
Right, but I think of the opportunity, this lets me in this session give a lot of the information that I would typically do with my budget. Now I can come to just kind of what I need, and you'll have a lot of the background that I've already kind of put forward tonight on the numbers and what they are and why they are and why we see increases in certain places and that.
Excellent, thank you. And so we can do that, but before, I know we're 20 minutes over, but before we adjourn, is there anything that we need to formally, as a committee, bring to the board?
I think just a recommendation on what you heard tonight as it relates to the FY25 budget. Are you comfortable with those proposals in appropriating the savings? No additional taxes appropriated, 15,000.
So that would
And-
be you're
Yeah.
looking at
Just a
a
recommendation to the full
recommendation for
board.
our October 28th meeting
Yes.
or special meeting of the board.
Yep.
Any discussion or any motion to bring what we talked about here forward?
I mean, so moved. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what we're moving other than,
You want to show that chart?
That, it would be the
bond proceedings and the surplus from this year would be
Yeah, yeah.
reallocated.
Yeah, all of
If I can get back
what we
there,
were
so,
back
yep.
in here.
So we're gonna make these adjustments in these expenditure accounts.
Yep.
Lowers and high. We'll tuck that 15 somewhere. And then adjust the revenues and appropriate last year's savings from the budget of that 554,000 with a proposed transfer up to this, into the Special Education Trust Fund. But that would be used as a contingency in the event things run a little crazy. I handed this out, and you can take it. The one that's only 2 pages, or front, back, 3 pages, is just the account lines for student services, 1,200 and 2,100. So you can see where there's high numbers and low numbers. But I'm comfortable keeping the status quo in the sense that it's very early. You have a $2.3 million special ed reserve. With this, we can handle some volatility without impacting local.
So I move that we bring the fiscal year 25 budget as recommended by the district to the final budget meeting on October 28th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded. Is there any discussion? Do you want to talk about the 15,000?
Jack promised me he's going to see.
He's going to find it?
You will see
When-
that.
Because we will have some adjustments when we see
What
the
what
tax
the assessment comes in
assessment
at.
is. So, all right, so it's
I
been
don't think I
moved.
was officially appointed.
You are officially
Thank you.
appointed by the chair of this committee, so this is the only vote that we've had.
Yes.
So having been moved and seconded, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are no abstentions. Thank you very much. Do we have any further business for this committee tonight?
Move to adjourn.
Well, wait a minute.
Oh.
I thought we were going to do a non-public.
I think
think
we
we're waiting.
postponed that until November.
All right.
So-
Good.
I know, great.
And we'll
great.
keep getting over it. We're good.
So
We
I
have
have
enough direction.
I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cotton. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. Thank
Got
you.
it.
Good night.